Welcome back from that short commercial break, and I welcome you to this segment as we go through the press, what's making headlines into the world of print media. And of course, I've not been able to get availed with the hard copies, but I'm going to review them on my online here, and we see what's making headlines, but still looking at business in the different medias right there. So I'm reading on the soft copy this time around, and I see something here in the Daily Monitor as government banking on electric vehicles to boost mining. Of course, according to the report here, the Minister of State for Mineral Development says the transition to green energy is a key factor that's on which Uganda will hinge the development of its mineral sector that's in years to come. Speaking during a multi-stakeholder dialogue that's on a just energy transition, which was themed towards a people-centered and just energy transition. That's for East Africa State for Mineral Development. The minister, the East Africa, the theme is towards a people-centered and just energy transition. That's for East Africa. All right, that's the theme regarding that. Sorry, I was a little bit confused with a few statements here and there regarding this article. State for Mineral Development, Peter Lokere, said that the transition to green energy had already created an increase in demand that's for critical minerals to power. That's new technological innovations such as electric vehicles, wind turbines, we're talking about solar panels and the batteries. All right, this is very interesting insight right here. And of course, still, a typical electric vehicle will need 6 times more minerals than a conventional car. Similarly, according to the International Energy Agency, that's an onshore wind plant will need 9 times that's more minerals than a gas-fired plant. And of course, that is a statement. He said nothing that government had already built plans to decarbonize. That's the transport sector. Well, and of course, still further on this report, the transition to cleaner energy is increasingly, of course, gaining momentum with several experiments being tried out in Uganda and across the globe. Therefore, Mr. Lokere said government was prioritizing, and of course, the development of renewable energy, beginning with decarbonizing the transportation sector. Okay, and still into the Daily Monitor, and we're still seeing what's making headlines right there. I'm loading on my device right here, and now we head straight to another what's making headlines as government to convert Namambe, that's power plant, into a gas production unit. I'm still in the Daily Monitor reviewing this report. Okay, according to Energy Minister Ruth Nankabira, government has already secured a memorandum of understanding with government of Tanzania that's to convert Namambe thermal power plant into a liquefied petroleum gas production unit. Wow, very interesting. The Ministry of Energy has said that it is engaging the government of Tanzania to convert the recently reprocessed Namambe thermal power plant into a liquefied petroleum gas production unit. And of course, speaking that's during the unveiling of the Consumer Protection and Installation Permit Center in Kampala last week. Energy Minister Ruth Nankabira said at an, of course, disclosed date that she will unveil a whole plan that's of turning Namambe, turning Namambe thermal power plant into a liquefied petroleum gas manufacturing facility right there. Very remarkable. Of course, the development comes barely a year after government took over the management and maintenance of the thermal power plant, which had been running under the concession since 2017. The government had entered into 13-year build that's own, operate, and the government had entered into a 13-year build, own, operate, and transfer concession with Jacobson Electro, which had been generating 50 megawatts that's of electricity right there. However, the concession expired in 2021, after which government took over the plant, which is currently being managed by Uganda Electricity, by the Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited. Okay, quite more of that report still going on, but I will just give you just the highlights. You can actually go search more concerning that matter, and probably it will be quite of great benefit for you to get this information right there. And of course, it's exactly 41 minutes that's past the hour of 7 a.m. and at this particular time, let's head straight to the international news. Okay, and now talking international, of course, crossing the borders away from Uganda. And now we start with Kenya, and this time around we are looking at the power of Kenya as Kenya's electricity consumption drops on the higher prices. Electricity consumption in Kenya fell last month as users began feeling the pinch of higher energy prices on discontinued subsidies and weakening shilling. Data from the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, that's EPRA, shows power has declined to 1.1 billion kilowatts in September from 1.11 billion units which were consumed in August after the prices were increased for the first time, that's in 10 months. Electricity use is one of the major barometers of how the economy is performing, with the low power uptake signaling reduced economic activities as manufacturing. Of course, that is something which is of course, grieving the economic performance of the nation. And of course, this is due to the higher prices. Now power consumption is estimated, of course, to go down, something which really should be taken into great consideration by the authorities. All right, still on this particular report, electricity is one of the major barometers. Barometers of how economy is performing, with the lower uptake signaling reduced economic activities, that's manufacturing inclusive. The drop in power consumption came after EPRA increased the fuel component, that's of the power bill. Yes, the fuel cost component, that's of the power bill, that's by 46.6%, leading that's to a sharp jump in the prices right there. Okay, total units generated and purchased, that's including hydros excluding exports in September 2022 was 1.9. It was actually 1 million, about a billion kilowatts right there. It's quite a big figure here as I'm trying to read. So you can see the consumption drops due to that's on higher pricing. So the consumption definitely is affecting the manufacturing sector in that country. But I hope I know quite a lot is being done to ensure that the situation is put in control regarding that aspect. And now away from Kenya, let's say to Tanzania, and this time around we are looking at Democratic Republic of Congo and Tanzania. Democratic Republic Congo's, oh wow, very, very interesting name. Of course, we see a very, that's Dr. Democratic Republic of Congo Shideki, that's the name I guess, she visits Tanzania. And of course the grand infrastructure projects such as the Standard Gauge Railway, of course, that's on a highway construction, took center stage yesterday when, of course, the President Samia Suluhu Hassan welcomed the Democratic Republic of Congo counterpart, that's Felix. He has quite a very complex name to pronounce there, quite sounds very French, very, very hard to pronounce. He's a counterpart in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but his other name is Felix. All right. The two leaders are stepping their countries' bilateral ties, focusing primarily on joint infrastructure projects as they seek to improve trade, investment, and social cooperation, and of course to unlock their growth potentials. On President's, of course, that the Congo's counterpart visiting Kenya, that's Felix, first day of his official visit, that was yesterday. The two countries signed a memorandum of understanding, most especially in areas of cooperation. Something very remarkable. President Hassan said that the two countries recently formed that's a committee, of course, comprising of ministers, different ministers from each side, to look into areas of cooperation, and the team came up with 50 recommendations. Very remarkable there. The president, that's of Tanzania, mentioned the development of Chibirizi port, that's on Lake Tanganyika, and a number of other projects as further steps towards fostering trade between Tanzania and Democratic Republic of Congo. According to the Congo counterpart, that's Felix, improving the trade and investment ties within the East Africa region was a key in development, and of course, development and a way for region to reduce its dependency. That's on foreign aid. Still in this report, the counterpart said that he is looking forward on cooperating with Tanzania and East African community in creating solutions that's to combat the climate change, which is an imminent issue regionally and globally. All right, now away from Congo, we are looking at that memorandum of understanding between that's Tanzania and Congo, and that is something very remarkable right there. Okay, as we wind up the news, the international news, we look at China loans to Kenya. This time around, China loans to Kenya fall for the first time in 20 years. Chinese loans to Kenya have dropped for the first time in 15 years in Beijing, as Beijing adopts more cautious lending in Africa, where some nations have reached the limit of their borrowing capacity. The prospect of default looms. This is quite something, a little bit of disaster, because these nations have been largely depending on these aids, and now if of course the limit has reached, now that's what we call being in reds, operating in red, something very serious. Data from the Treasury shows China's total lending dropped, that's to $6.83 billion in June, that's from $7.05 billion US a year ago, and 3 billion, that's in 2016. Available public records show that Chinese loans to Kenya dropped marginally, that's in 2022. The rare fall in Chinese debt marches in a period when the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have stepped up lending to Kenya, firming the institution's grip on the country's economy. Nairobi has been a major beneficiary of China's loans for the development of mega infrastructure such as roads and a modern railway over the last decade, making Beijing the largest bilateral creditor since 2015. The International Monetary Fund in 2020 listed more than 20 African countries, including Kenya, as being in or at high risk of debt distress. Very, very, very true. Lower funding to Africa, that's local analysts say, could be a pointer that Beijing is starting, and of course to see signs of reduced benefits from the cash it commits in the commitment. Wow, that's so scary. Chinese lenders have traditionally shown flexibility and of course on loan terms for projects in Africa seen as politically important. That's for Beijing. China has over the last 2 decades established itself as a financer of the first resort for many low and middle income countries, providing record amounts of international development finance. That's according to the researchers at the College of William and Mary in a report that's late September. Their findings suggested that African countries receive 42%, that's of all Chinese, 42% of all Chinese official development assistance. That's between 2000 and 2017. And of course, as we know that China's influence on Kenya's mega projects has started gathering steam with the construction of the Thika superhighway that was between January 2009 and November 2012 at a cost of nearly 32 billion Kenyan shillings. Yes, 32 billion Kenyan shillings in the last term. That's of President Kibaki. Oh, very something which, you know, it's of great effect that most of the African countries largely depend on foreign aid, and you know, the loans are not really performing to the expectations of the lenders, so that is really causing quite a great tension in the middle income countries. All right, and that's the final report regarding that. And now let's get straight, this particular time we are heading straight to the business tips and quotes as we get inspirations from the people that have gone ahead us in the world of business. Let's get into the business tips and quotes, but firstly, let's review the business tip of the day. The business tip of the day says focus on leads and non-sales, and of course content planning compared to optimized website forms, and of course an intelligent email automation. Follow-up is critical to business success, and also the approach builds trust by giving away the free value before asking for someone's hard-earned money. Focus on leads, non-sales, and the person, the author of this tip, is looking at content marketing, and of course compared with optimized website forms. Wow, that's very, and I believe we've talked about this over and over, that before you really think about maximizing sales of your enterprise, put in mind the aspect of what you are delivering to the people right there. And a majority of the businesses actually, before they officially go into starting to execute operations, they first find out from the public, before they start to really make the sales, how do they find the product that has been produced? They first produce a prototype. They do what we call a market survey to see what demand and how best they can actually improve the product that they have just put on the market. And of course, this is the feedback that is coming from the consumers, the would-be consumers of the product, because remember, you're not making the product for yourself, but you're making it for the consumer. So what the consumer says is always very important. The opinion really matters. The packaging of the product that you put out there is really very remarkable. It matters to the producer, to the consumer, before you start off thinking of making money out of these people. Yes, so that is something very important. So think about that. Remember, the world is always competitive, and there is always an evolution. And in that evolution, consumers' tastes and preferences keep on changing. So you have to move with the trend, move with the wave. And that all comes back with how you package your content and deliver it to the people that should consume it. All right, and lastly, let's review the business quote of the day. The business quote of the day says, there is simply no substitute for hard work, and of course, there is no substitute for hard work when it comes to achieving success. That is the CEO of Nylon. Yeah, of course, we always, we dream big. We always want to have all this, but and at some point we have this delusion that probably this will come just by we speaking about that. Yes, you're very powerful at dreaming, but that is not going to be manifested if you just keep on talking about what you really want to do. It comes from a place of hard work. You step out of your comfort zone and do what you're supposed to do to ensure that you achieve what you achieve. And I'll tell you the truth, it's never easy. Never easy at all. But it takes the broad state, and that's what distinguishes between the wealthy, the extremely wealthy, and the normal people, just normal average earning individuals. The ability to come out of the comfort zone and you actually pursue that you're trying to pursue. Remember, if you talk too much, you are not different from a mediocre, regardless of how knowledgeable your talk might seem to carry. You might seem to have enticing words that can really move the crowds, but at the end of the day, what's going to define you as an entrepreneur, as a personnel, is results. Can you demonstrate the degree? I always get issues personally, on a personal basis. If I see you, probably you've been around people that actually can speak billion-dollar ideas, but when you look at their life, really, it doesn't match up with the ideas they speak about. So there is no balance. So that means that person, probably you like to talk about these ideas, but you're not willing to step out and pursue these ideas to ensure that they actually come to pass. Of course, there is a state of dreaming and you're really working towards that. It's understandable. I may talk about having $1 billion in the future and I don't have it now, but I'm doing something about it. So, hard work. I'm doing the hard work. And when we talk about hard work, we don't mean that you're going to start working today and tomorrow you're there. It takes time. It's about stages. It's quite unfortunate that we are back in a generation that wants to, what we call one night success. Well, if you're lucky, you will get it, but chances are high you will lose it so fast. All right, and that's it for the business tips and quotes. It's exactly 57 minutes past the hour of 7 a.m., 3 minutes just to 8 a.m. Let's get into a short commercial break. We'll return with a coffee quote. Good morning.